Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Following the last episode where I deliberated on points and ideas on manifesting the new curriculum, and when you think about it, it seems quite impossible to do everything in 3 years. But the point of the matter is, there are a lot of stuff that is in the existing curriculum that not necessary to be there. It needs a whole attitude, no, a new perspective, a new way to look at it if we want to actually discuss this at all. Because from the outset, even myself, who had been proposing the 5-year curriculum, agreeing with it, or just simply, shall I say, accepting it without questioning it all these years, I had that attitude. I had that perception, and it was easier that way. Let's talk about the curriculum in a way that you can enhance it. But because of a few things that's happening, a few chats, a few conversations, an observation of my graduates or those who graduated when I was teaching them in the first degree, and who seems to be happy or seems to be able to tackle and challenge themselves even to the international level, in which I have something for you here. I have an interview with Gogolarajan, who is the inspiration behind my set of inquiries in the last few episodes, and especially the magic formula. I will have that interview with Gogolarajan soon. So keep in view of the next few episodes. But coming back to this whole perceptional objective of what I'm trying to achieve here, the change in perception in terms of it is necessary that the best of minds, those who desire to do architecture, those who feel that they would love to be an architect, that would love to be challenged, those who, when they're 18 years old, fresh out of school, the thought or the feelings come to mind that they want to serve society in that way. Just loving to draw, we don't know where they're coming from, the beautiful mind, the ones that are wanting to make a difference with regard to the built environment, to be an architect, just love to draw. And sometimes some of them, like myself, came into architecture by default because we are good at art. And I wasn't having any good science grades, or mathematics to be exact. But it doesn't mean that, that doesn't mean that potentially I could do well in architecture. And you could imagine people who have the grades choosing other disciplines, but they know that it can do well in architecture, and there you go, you need 5 years, and that's like becoming a doctor, and then you have another couple of years before you can actually be a registered architect. That itself is a detriment to getting those minds on board, those souls on board, actually. And In 3 years, these souls can be that architect by going to another couple of years and register later. And that's feasible comparing with other degrees. Why is it that we're hopping on getting ourselves, complicate ourselves with this long process of being an architect? Why are we doing this? Perhaps it is unwieldy, and perhaps there is an interest to sustain the Masters of Architecture degree because that makes money. I mean, let me go and be very clear that university degrees, university education is money-making endeavor, and the whole ranking system out there sustains the status quo of the money-making endeavor. Now, there's one argument, one deliberation that I didn't deliberate too much, but in fact, it escaped me. And the fact that the ranking system has a lot to do with this as well. Now, this is an inkling. This is just my feelings, my gut feelings. So based on my observations from the past and reading around this issue, I'm saying that, certain schools of architecture, excuse me, or schools or universities that have architecture in them or the built environment, yeah? Like Harvard, Yale, American universities, European universities. It's interesting that ETH from Zurich opts out of the ranking system. That is so interesting, and we could interview about that. They can hold on their own, I suppose, to get students without having to be in the ranking system, because the ranking system is something that helps students to make a decision which university to go to as well. So you have Harvard and all these universities occupying number 1 to 20 or 30, and then we have us jostling for 40 to 50 or 100. And when do you think that perhaps, I would like to say, universities in Malaysia get to be top 10? When will that be? Now, yeah, I'm giving an idea about developing countries, the lack of funding, because the other day we had that Palestinian camping in the universities, and then we found out that a university was getting funding. An Ivy League university in the US was getting funding of $4 billion. And I was remembering that University of Malaya gets 400 million from the government. Look at that. You imagine just the funding itself can sustain the university ranking to be top 20, top 30. It's all a money's game. When there's a lot of money's game to be played, when it comes to sustaining universities and education, we lose from the first instance, right? So I'm sort of taking a step back from this notion, this whole idea that we will never get that ranking no matter how hard we work, because having a lot of money, you can have the best facilities, the best professors working for you. And then you can do a lot of stuff. You could do a lot of programs. And then another thing is the professional bodies and agencies that determine your curriculum based on their wants and needs. So in Malaysia, we have a very strong developer influence. That's where the money comes from in terms of the industry itself, how the industry is sustained. But we have to play the game. That's the market demand, right? So, but why must they dictate the outcome? Now, I'm pretty sure that developer would like people to graduate quicker. I mean, there's a lot of interest from different stakeholders, the parents, the profession, want to maintain the status quo as well. But when there's pressure from society, such as the other stakeholders and developers in the government, then the professional body would take the stand that we need to look into the 3-year program rather than the 5-year program for architectural graduate. It's just that they can still maintain that 5-year program, but then the government would be interested in making money in the university, but they would also be interested that they will have quality graduates, and the graduates don't migrate somewhere else, and that be a brain drain in developing countries such as in Malaysia. So, whether my points are valid or not is just coming from me. So just bear with me. My points and my deliberation on the ranking system of universities and how it influences the quality of education. So if you want to compete, the logistical way or the logical way is the more appropriate word here, is if you want to compete, you'd want the best brains to go into your university and get into the workforce as soon as possible. You'd want to review the 5-year program. You'd want to see also other aspects of it, like people who graduate from the first degree, where they're going. How many % of people from the first degree in Malaysia goes to the second degree? I mean, there are more and more students coming from local universities now because of the lack of scholarships and less scholarship given. I'm not saying lack of scholarship. Less is given as compared to my time, in the 80s. So what I'm trying to say is that we're relying on local universities to train the younger people in our nation and become competitive, not only in our own country, but internationally, so that they could actually get into the workforce and get into the multinational companies. They can compete. If you don't want to go into the rankings, what you're saying, Malaysian universities are saying, is that we'd want our graduates to compete with the National University of Singapore or universities in Asia, in Hong Kong or in China, that are competitive. We want our graduates to be as competitive as that. That's why we compete in university ranking. That is one of the points that also I would like to put forth. So there are a few points there. And in episodes to come, if I were to say, get interviews done, is because of this premise, this whole idea of the ranking system and the whole system of university education. Architecture schools are not independent. They do rely on the university for funding, and those independent schools like the Architectural Association are expensive. So standalone architecture schools are expensive. And that's some other debate and other discussion elsewhere. But the point I'm trying to make is we are reliant on the universities. We are reliant on government funding in Malaysia. So a 3-year course would make sense. It's just how to now, the next few episodes, apart from the interview that I'm going to have with Gogolo Rajan, is proposing the new curriculum based on the old curriculum. I have to base on something because the debate will be the old curriculum does this, does this, does this. But what I'm going to argue is you don't have to have this. You can take this out. This, because of how a human being from 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that's 4 years. Okay, around that age, they could learn a lot from a lot of other things, informal learning, and as well through different modes of learning. I mean, different types of learning or different approach. And group learning, how do we get them to do more of having their own voice and going out there? By the second year, by the first year, by the first instance, when they come to first year of architecture, they're not going about it thinking they're a pseudo artist or a pseudo designer. They're going in about it thinking that they're going to be an architect. Whether they become an artist later is because thinking themselves being an architect in the first year, and not, the thing that they do is a reflection that this is for architecture. So it will be that I will review also the old curriculum that I know of. It may be revised already. I mean, I'm referring to the past where I was an educator, which is having tenure or having a full-time job. And I'm going to refer to those experiences, doing the curriculum as well and conducting studio courses. So it is always to do with the skills and knowledge and the ability for someone to compete or someone to be confident. And confidence it's not a small word. To gain confidence from the very start. How do you get in and you work hard, you know what it's all about, and you start working hard. You're not shall we say, in a dream, when in the first year. How do you start off the first year like that? And the lecturers are full-time staff. Yes, if we have a 3-year curriculum, there'll be less lecturers. There'll be less need for staff. That's beside the point. The point is the learning experience of students. So if you have lecturers in your department who are not doing much in terms of the direct involvement with the studio curriculum, and even if you're a specialist, you could be sourced from outside. For sure. You can be doing workshops and there is a certain amount of, shall we say, outcomes that you need to achieve. Because we are sure about the education of the architect. We're not leaving it to chance or leaving it to others to shall we say, design and plan and design the curriculum. So the new curriculum is an idea based on perceptions and based on the need and based on the future of the profession and what we see is not working and what we see need to be worked on. So, okay, bear with me that you're going to get the new curriculum soon enough, and it will be like a semester. I mean, it will be describing each semester, what is happening in each semester. And I'm sure there'll be criticism, but if you could understand what is the learning experience and the skills that we need to get to speed with the graduates at the end, I'm not talking about the good students, I'm talking about everybody in that finished the 3 years. There are dropouts, and that's a different story, but we're talking about if you're graduating somebody by the end of 3 years, that person will be confident of tackling the traditional architecture role in the industry. If they chose or they decide not to do architecture, they have enough training and experience in those 3 years to be confident enough to do filmmaking, an artist, a fashion designer. I'm not saying that architecture school is an alternative to fashion design school or product design school. I'm not. I'm arguing that architecture is the mother of all arts because architecture has been watered down to be an engineering course or to think that they are to do with building or even building surveyors. What I'm trying to say is that architecture courses need to be solid architecture course where it is training someone or getting them to have experience to in a discipline that is the mother of all arts and humanities. I'm adding humanities there. Arts is more, of course. Arts for sure. The mother of all arts. And what he's going to say about that when architecture goes back to being the mother of all arts and the basis. Just say if it takes you 3 years to be a fashion designer, out of architecture school, how are you going to learn fashion design? How are you going to learn product design is up to you. But you have that sense of accomplishment or that sense of confidence that you can study a year, invest yourself in whatever it is, sales and marketing, invest yourself in tech, in engineering, invest yourself further by going to other programs because there's so many programs out there by self-study, by self-education, by going into industry. Right after architecture school, you go to the fashion design industry and learn from people, learn from the mistakes that you do there, or the film production industry. So because we keep on thinking about the equipment, we think about the drawing board, we think about the computers, digital architecture, we keep thinking about Revit and BIM and the skills to do that. Don't think about those things yet. When we start doing the new curriculum, think about essential skills that people are talking about to be understanding about society problems, to actually go and tackle the problem. Because you could do it yourself. You could be the technical person, the BIMs, the Revits, and whatever illustration expert that you wish to be to get money, to earn your living. But what about the thinkers? What about those who are gonna, what about solving the problem? What about hypothesis? What about knowing a design problem when you see one? What about observational, analytical, and critical thinking skills? And which is essential to cope with life in any industries. All those technical things you can actually get other people to do for you as well because you want to dive into that. You go into that. And then after that, you will be able to tell people what to do or instruct or plan out and design yourself, whatever it is, the program, project that you want to do and get the right people to be in. So, getting back into basics, getting back to square one of what architecture, the mother of arts, and perhaps humanities as well, if they read more. Thank you very much for listening. Talk to you real soon again.